Okay, so uh, hello everyone. My name is Jen Gillick, and I am the program director at the Northwest chapter of American Parkinson's. And we are super pleased that you have joined us here today for our second in our Beyond Medication series. The first one we did was a series about 4 weeks to Pro PD, which was all about nutrition and diet in Parkinson's. If you were not here for that and interested in that, all of those videos are recorded and posted on our APDA Northwest YouTube channel. So that is there for you. These will also be posted there. We love having you here live, but if you want to go back to these videos or something comes up and you're not able to be here, then you can always go back and watch these videos on our YouTube channel. So this Beyond Medication series was kind of this brainchild that I started thinking about, where we do a lot of educational programming and you get tips and tidbits from each of those educational programming. But I wanted to really think outside of the box and really do some workshops that built on each other to give folks skills to hopefully make quality of life better in living with Parkinson's disease. So that's what we are hoping that you will get out of this. Things that will help improve quality of life for you as a caregiver, but also for who you're caregiving with. So that is why we are doing this, things that are beyond medication. So we are well aware that when someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, they're not given a playbook, and neither is someone who is providing assistance and love and help in things that become more challenging with Parkinson's disease. There isn't a playbook. There's not a workbook that a caregiver is handed to say, hey, this is how you do these things. So we are hoping to give you some of those tools. This is a start of a playbook. This is a start of some assistance pieces. So we have invited Heidi here, who I can't remember how to pronounce your last name, so you'll have to tell us. And Heidi is an occupational therapist from Ascend Therapy Services. And occupational therapists go through all this training. Their whole role is to help make life easier. If you no longer can do something, how can we get you to a point where there's assistance to be able to do these things? Or how do we adjust? So that's what an occupational therapist, part of their role. So Heidi is here today to talk about hands-on helpful caregiving. It'll be a 4-week series. We will talk about all sorts of things, and we will share the PowerPoints and the recordings with you and any resources that come up that we feel will be helpful. Just look for your email. I will do a post-event email. We do ask that you keep yourself muted so that it cuts down on background noise, and use the chat function to ask any questions that go along in this program. So Heidi, do you want to come onto the screen, turn your video on, and I'm going to spotlight you.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this program. We're very excited to have you here and to share your knowledge and answer questions. So again, please use the chat. I will be the monkey in the background that will help out with anything that you need, Heidi, and be monitoring the chat. So I will be back towards the end of the program.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me for this program. I'm really excited to be here and be able to discuss these things with you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick, so you don't have to look just at my face the whole time. Are we good? I'm gonna say we're good.
Yes, we are good.
Okay, perfect. I want to pull this up so I can see the chat a little bit too, just in case. Cool. So thank you so much, Jen, for the introduction. My name is Heidi. Heidi Huynh is how you pronounce it, like I'm a winner. And so I am just going to introduce myself a little bit here. There we go. Cool. So that we know kind of who I am and why I'm talking to you and what we're doing. So my name is Heidi. I am the founder of Ascend Therapy Services, which is a mobile outpatient occupational therapy practice, and we can talk more about what that means. But essentially, as Jen said, what we do as occupational therapy is help people to be able to, my main purpose is to maximize independence and safety. And I always kind of see occupational therapy as trained problem solvers. We take problems and situations and we figure out, okay, what can we do a little bit differently, or what can we train to be stronger to be able to do some of those things again. So, sorry, I just want to make this a little bit smaller on my screen. Um, okay, so I have spent years working as an occupational therapist in various settings with aging adults, from skilled nursing facilities, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and in their own homes, kind of all of the above. So I have different experience in settings that way. And I just love helping others actively engage in their life and being able to participate in their activities. And I love seeing the spark that they have when they've been struggling and they haven't been doing an activity, and then they figure out a way to do it and they are able to do that again. And so that's the joy that I have in this work that I do, and seeing that spark of accomplishment. And my mission, as I said, is to help aging adults maximize independence and safety so they can continue to do the things that are important to them, so they can continue to do the things that they love. And I do that by working with people one-on-one with therapy through occupational therapy services. As I said, I do mobile outpatient. So I go to the person, I come to you, whether they are in assisted living or whether they're in their own home. I go to wherever they call home to really help focus on what is the situation that they're in and how can we make it a little bit better in their own natural environment. So I do that through therapy, and I also try to help maximize independence and safety through education. So there's two pieces of that. On my website, I have a lot of different informational handouts and things for the people as they're aging and they need something, but also through sharing different support systems that exist. I have realized by doing this that there's a lot of support and organizations out there, but a lot of people just have no idea that they even exist. So I want to kind of share that information so people are able to see the resources that are out there for them and help them get the support that they need in doing that. So when I'm not doing OT or chatting with you guys, I'm wrangling in those three crazy kids on the screen there. We love just exploring as a family and doing things. My daughters are 6 and 3, and my son is 9 months old. So it's a lot of fun. It's busy, and we're all over the place. I love going to sporting events with my husband and just being outside. So I've always loved having fun and loved doing things. And my undergrad is in therapeutic recreation. And so I've always been passionate about helping people do the things they love to do. So with OT, it just kind of takes that other step, and I help them do what they need to do so they can do what they love to do. So I might just throughout this course kind of use my kids as examples and things, because there are similar situations at times where I am caring for them and something happens, and I'm in no way comparing your loved ones and who you are working with a child, but just comparing some situations that I may encounter in my own life to kind of help share information. So I just want to throw that out there. I might use them as examples, not comparing it to your situation, but just know that we kind of might encounter some similar situations. So moving on. Sorry, I'm still getting used to this whole PowerPoint thing. So this is the course that we're doing over the next 4 weeks. It is hand-on helpful caregiving. So just to kind of review some of the learning objectives, I know that you saw this when you registered, but we really want to learn the benefits of supporting those that you care for and maximizing their participation and engagement in daily life. So my focus with this course is to help you help them help themselves, if that makes sense, rather than you guys as caregivers doing things for them or breaking down some of those struggles that you may have with that, so that they can really help themselves and be engaged in situations as we go through them. We want to discover the small details that can change the big picture of daily tasks and activities. So sometimes it's just something really small that, like I said, as an OT, I'm a a trained problem solver. So I've been trained to notice those little things that we can change that other people might just not think of that can make a big difference in someone's independence and participation. And also to walk away with a list of practical modifications that can be implemented immediately. So we're going to do all of these things by focusing on the areas of positioning and self-ergonomics. So that's what we're talking about next week. We'll talk about environment and how we can kind of modify our environment without big remodels to help support someone. And we'll talk about the use of adaptive equipment, which is one of my favorite topics. We'll do that in that last week. So today is more of a broad overview. We're going to talk about understanding the foundations and purpose of what we're striving for through helping people help themselves. And then in the next few weeks, we'll talk about more practical things that you'll be able to implement right away. So today's kind of more of a summary and trying to understand each other and where we're coming from and where we're going with all of this. So if you guys can, I'd really love to hear just a little bit about you. Maybe if you could put in the chat, your name, tell us where you're from, and maybe how long have you been on this caregiver journey with someone with Parkinson's, so we can kind of see who we're talking to here. So I'm not just talking to my screen, but you as the people and individuals. So just let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from, and how long you've been on this journey of caregiving.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. So my name is Mariah. I am from Long Beach, California. My daughter is 15. She actually just turned 15 this year. And she's been diagnosed with Parkinsonism, the early symptoms of Parkinson's. Unfortunately, her father suffers from Parkinson's. And then, kind of the great grandmother, her grandpa. It's kind of just been running through the family. So, with her being so young, I just wanted to get although I have been in nursing for some time, I just wanted to get, new information, better ways that I can help her get through, everyday life. Sometimes she doesn't want to engage in certain activities. So I hope you do work with children. I will be interested in, reaching out further beyond this meeting. And that's it. So hello and nice to meet you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. So we have some people diagnosed just this past October, 5 years. Mary, nice to see you. Stella diagnosed was someone diagnosed 13 years ago, 11 years. So you guys some of you have been on this journey for a while. 17 years ago, a year and a half ago, and some are pretty fresh and new. So, and this is also a great chance, for us just to be together. And there'll be times that I'm asking you guys questions to kind of put in the chat and to talk about, so we can all help each other out as well. So thank you all for tuning in and being here today. And if you do have any questions, like Jen said, just stick them in the chat throughout. If I miss it, she'll make sure to let me know. And then we'll go from there. So I'm going to start off talking about why promoting participation. Why do we really want to help them help themselves? And some of these things we talk about today might be kind of common sense, and some of them might just bring up ideas and thoughts that we maybe haven't noticed before. So sometimes letting someone do things themselves is a lot more work than us just doing it for them. So why do we want to promote this participation? Why do we want to take the time to do that when it might take me 1 minute to do it, but it'll take them 15 minutes to do it? But it really is so beneficial to allow them those 15 minutes to take that task. And so one part about it is it might be more work for you now, but hopefully the goal is, as you get kind of in a routine with things and them helping themselves in certain ways, it will kind of clear you up. Maybe if you start a task and they can do it for a little while, you can run and do something and come back in the room rather than being there the whole time. I have OT students work with me, and when they start, it takes more of my time. It's kind of more difficult. but then they get in the swing of things and they take over, and I'm able to do something else while they're working. So it makes it easier over time. And that's the goal here, is to make it a little bit easier for you guys once you kind of get into a habit and routine. And also just overall quality of life is definitely improved by, greater participation in things. Yeah, it might take longer, but they have more control in what's going on and what's happening. They have more autonomy and a sense of purpose by them participating in something rather than something being done to them. It also strengthens skills. So as someone is participating in a task, putting on their shoes, cooking their breakfast, whatever it might be, they're using their strength. They're getting stronger by doing the things. They're using their hands. They're working on those fine motor tasks. They're gaining endurance through participating in something when, rather than just sitting there doing, and that keeps their endurance up. So we definitely want to allow them to use those skills through this participation. And if you don't use it, you lose it. I know we've all heard that saying, and it's just so true. I've seen people, even in a matter of a couple weeks, if we stop therapy for a little while and come back, and some things are more difficult than it was when they were doing it more often. So we want to maintain the skills that people have. And sometimes if someone gets help in one scenario, like, oh, I can't get my shoes on anymore, that's too hard, so you do it for me now, and them needing help in that kind of, then they portray that loss of that ability into other abilities. So then they might think, oh, well, I can't cook for myself either, and I can't dress myself either because I need help with this, and they start wanting help for more and more things. So that's also why we want to promote them doing as much as they can in every scenario possible, so they don't then want help in more and more scenarios when they really could probably get their breakfast on their own or brush their teeth or whatever the situation might be. And I know that you guys all are working with people in a whole variety of assist levels. I know that some of you are providing a lot of assistance for those that you're caring for. Some of you, it's kind of 50-50 what they're doing, and a lot of you, they're still doing a lot of things on their own. You just give them a little bit of help now and then, but these are some things to maybe think of and keep in mind as you continue to work with them. So definitely, though, you want to find a balance. There are situations when it might be better for you just to help them or do something for them rather than forcing them to do it by themselves. I know that for me, my 9-month-old, he's waking up less and less at night. But when he wakes up in the middle of the night, I go and I feed him, and I feed him back to sleep, and then I go back to sleep. And I know a lot of people have said, oh, you shouldn't feed your baby to sleep. And maybe they're right, but for me, it gets him to sleep and then I get sleep. So what's so bad about it, right? And so that's what works for me. So you need to find a balance in what works for you and what works for the person that you're caring with. It's just all about that balance, and not all one way or all another way. Sometimes they might not want to do something for themselves, and that's something that we'll talk about later. And we do want to encourage this participation, but only in situations where it makes sense. So let's say someone really has a hard time getting their socks and shoes on, and we're trying to force it. And we're like, Heidi said, you need to do as much as you can on your own. But getting their socks and shoes on themselves really isn't that important to them, but maybe making their breakfast is. And if they take all their time getting their socks and shoes on, now they don't have the energy to make their breakfast. So in that scenario, it makes sense. You help them with their socks and shoes, and then they have the energy to do what they really want to do, which is making their breakfast. But if it's just because it's hard and they don't want to do it, that's a time to maybe encourage, oh, let's try this way to do it and make it a little bit easier. So it's all about finding a balance, finding what works best for you and for the person that you're caring for. And this is the picture on the screen right now is actually my grandpa a while back. And I put this here because about why participate. He was one of those ones that didn't want to do some things. He didn't want to go to the driving range with us. And we dragged him out there, and he had his oxygen tank, and it was work, and he didn't want to go, but we convinced him to go. And afterwards, he said he was glad he went. And so it's kind of those situations. Sometimes we got to find a way to get something to start happening, and then they actually will be happy that they did it. So that's that. there are some barriers as you're working with your person who has Parkinson's in that participation, right? That's why they need caregivers. That's why you're there. There's some things that make it difficult. And so some of these things might be attitude and them, like my grandpa, just not wanting to do it. Sometimes it might be time. Like we said, it takes me 1 minute to do it, but we don't have the 15 minutes it takes for them to do it. And so that can be a barrier. I know some people talked about freezing being a situation, and that can be a barrier, or tremors and having those tremors making it difficult to do some of the things with their hands. That's a barrier. So go ahead, and Jen has a poll, which we'll do in just a second. But if there are any other barriers that you can think of, like, yeah, Heidi, you're saying let them do some things. That's great. But this is really getting in the way. Go ahead and put that in the chat and let me know what are some other barriers that you've noticed that makes it difficult for the person you're caring for to do those things, to participate in some things. Safety, yeah, for sure. That is a definite, that's a big one. Balance issues, that's another big one too. Sometimes wanting to do it themselves, but it's not safe. That's one of the biggest things, and it's so hard. And I will talk about that a little bit more. If I don't, remind me at the end, but I think I talk about it a little later. But yeah, definitely wanting to do that. Cognitive issues, short-term memory, so more of a safety memory thing for sure. Yeah, and these are all things that they are barriers, and these are all things that occupational therapists can address with someone. And anxiety, yeah, brings on med failure, sure. Anxiety and being scared, that's a big one too. So not saying that depression, yeah, that OT or therapy or PT or whatnot would fix these barriers, right? But it's our job to help overcome these barriers and find ways to make things happen. So hard time learning new things, definitely PTSD. How to leave on time for everything. You're telling me. It's not easy leaving on time with 3 kids either. So we'll talk about all of those things. Overthinking things, definitely. I know I was working with someone, and he always wanted to have this plan and kind of perseverated on it. And he lived in a building with stairs and was thinking, okay, if something happens, if there's a fire, like I'm going to need my 2 canes to get me down the stairs. Whereas that's not a safe situation. And they have a chair thing. But he was just so worried about that. He always needed to know where his 2 canes were so that he could do that, in overthinking those situations. So these are all definitely barriers that can get in the way of someone participating more and doing things for sure. We're going to talk about the ones on the screen, and then if there's time maybe and you guys have questions, we can come back and problem solve some of these other barriers. Not remembering steps that we just worked on, that's a big one too. So it's tough. So how many of you, Jen has a poll, I don't know how it works. She'll do it. There we go. Which of these barriers, which of these do you think is a barrier for your loved one? So you can go ahead and put yes or no, I believe, for each of those things: the tremors, attitude, freezing, time, or other, something else.
I think you can make multiple choices. We will see. This is new.
Yeah, if it lets you, check all that apply. So yeah, they're all coming in. A lot about attitude, a lot about time. Trust me, I believe it. And it takes longer to do anything, and it takes longer to do something when you have tremors, or when you have an attitude not wanting to do something, or when you have the freezing. So these are all things that are applicable. So we'll just kind of, I'll chat through some of these as these polls keep coming in. I'm just interested to see, what comes up the most. So in terms of attitude and someone not wanting to participate, this is a big one. And I mentioned it before, and we will talk about it again in more detail, and it'll probably be an ongoing thing. But we have to just kind of find what motivates them and say it in a way that makes sense to them. If someone doesn't care about being strong, us saying you need to do this so you can stay strong isn't going to motivate them to do anything, because that's not what's important to them. We need to be patient, which I know is hard. It's very difficult. And try to see the scenario from their perspective and see what might motivate them to do something. And sometimes it's getting someone from the outside to recommend it. So yeah, but attitude.
Do you want me to end the poll? Sorry, Heidi, to
No, that's
interrupt.
okay. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I will do that. I wasn't sure how it's showing up on people's screens,
Yeah.
so
No,
I will end.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's just good to see, they're all a factor for everybody. And I think I can just exit out of the poll too. So when I was a kid, my dad coached my softball team all throughout high school. And he tells this story about how one time I was up to bat and he was trying to coach me through something and I was having a hard time and I wasn't getting it. And then someone else comes along and said pretty much the exact same thing. And then I hit the ball and I did what they were saying. And they told my dad he was doing everything right. The only problem was he's my dad. And I see that in so many scenarios. I see it with my kids. I don't know how people do homeschooling. Good for them. I never could. And so sometimes it's just hard. You're with this person all the time. You're their spouse or their child or their loved one or their parent or their caregiver. And it's hard to hear things from you all the time. And I see it all the time. So sometimes it's getting maybe just every now and then an outside caregiver to come in and help with some things. And maybe it's getting an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, someone of a different type of authority to come in and say the same thing. I'm working with a gentleman and I tell him all the time to take big steps. He kind of drags one of his feet and we're working on big steps. And he says, "You sound like my son." And I'm like, good. It's good that your son is saying that because he's right. But just there's just all these scenarios coming to my head that I can think of with spouses working together, and it's hard. And so it's important for us as caregivers to not take that personally when someone doesn't want to listen to us, and to understand that it is difficult taking it from a spouse or another type of loved one or caregiver. So maybe it is getting a therapist to come in and say the same thing you're saying, but in a different way or coming from a different person. And then that might help with the attitude a little bit. Sometimes, not always. Time we talked about, and if it's an issue, it's thinking about what can we reposition to give more time. And I might not be the best to talk about this because, like I said, it's hard getting out of the house with my 3 kids. And I think of things like my house is a mess, and my house is a mess because we're always late and always rushing and running out. So we're not picking up before we go. So what can I do differently? And it's a lot easier said than done. We're still struggling through the same things, but trying to think, it really is important for someone to be able to have the opportunity to do some things on their own. So how can we reposition our time to allow that? Again, maybe it's getting some help. Maybe it's once a week having a different caregiver come in and giving them that time so you can be doing something else. Maybe it's getting a therapist to come in. I know when I was working in skilled nursing, I would go in and get people up in the morning and they would get up and go to the bathroom and get dressed and they would do 90% of it themselves. But all the other days when their caregivers came in, they just did it because they had 10 people to get up and they're not able to give them that time that I was able to give them. So is there someone that we can get so at least once a week someone's getting this practice doing things on their own? Or can we alter or shift our responsibilities in a way to allow some time, restructure that time to provide them that opportunity? That's definitely one that's easier said than done, but thinking, is there anything we can do a little bit differently? With the tremors, I know everyone is affected differently. Some don't have any tremors, some it's so extreme they can't really do anything with their hands. So there is some adaptive equipment that can help with some different tasks, and we'll talk about that week 4. There are some exercises that we can work on through therapy to kind of do some things, and we'll try to talk about that. Just give examples of those also in the future, but that's just kind of showing that there are things that can be done to make people be able to combat those tremors and be able to participate in some things. freezing. So I made a whole slide on this because I know this was a topic some people were asking about. So we'll chat about this for a minute. And I'm sorry, I have my paper notes here. So if you see me looking around and moving, that's what I'm doing. I just want to make sure I don't forget all of this great stuff to tell you. So there were quite a few people in the poll that mentioned that freezing is a barrier and that they experience this as well. So freezing is something that can happen at any time, but it often happens during a transition. So transitioning from standing to walking, or from sitting to standing, or walking through a doorway, or turning a corner, turning around, stepping from one type of surface to another. Maybe you're on hard floor and now you're going to carpeted floor, or you're stepping up a curb. If someone is experiencing a stressful situation or attempting to multitask and do multiple things at once, these are all things that commonly can trigger this freezing. And like I said, it can happen anytime, but often it's with one of these transitions. And so with that, it's thinking, is there a way that we can anticipate these transitions and kind of help get past that freezing either before it starts or once it happens? What do I do from here so that we can keep going? As we all mentioned, time is a big thing. And if someone's frozen and we're not going, then we kind of get more stressed out in terms of, okay, we got to get this done, and try to rush things. And then that makes it difficult. So I'm going to throw out some of the things that tend to work at times, and you can go ahead and give them a try over this next week and see if any of them work. Some of them might not. It's all about problem solving and figuring out what works best for you and the person that you are working with. So one thing people can do to kind of help come out of freezing is marching, whether they're sitting or standing, kind of marching in place, just moving their legs up and down, or goose step, which is when you keep your knee straight and you kind of swing your whole leg back and forth like that from the hip. So if you're not able to take those steps, or if you're coming to a transition and you might freeze, let's get some of this motion going before we do that. Another thing that tends to work sometimes is just working on weight shifting, like they're not able to take that next step. So let's just shift our weight left to right, left to right. And then as we weight shift, maybe we can start to exaggerate that weight shift and take a step as we're shifting our weight off our legs. So as we shift to the right, try to take a step with the left, and vice versa. Everything we are doing, we want to do big and exaggerate, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but that kind of helps. We could step in time with the rhythm of music. So if you had your phone in your pocket and someone's getting kind of stuck, can we pull it out? Do we have music on our phone that we can play and try to kind of feel the rhythm and the beat and start marching in that beat, and then take steps with the music? Or if you don't have music with you, can you hum a song or sing a song or do some counting just to get some sort of rhythmic sound going, and then try to get rhythmic motion going with that sound? So those are some things that at times can help. Another one is visualizing a line on the floor to step over. So this kind of seems counteractive because they say, transition and stepping into a new surface can cause freezing, but also if we visualize something, that might help us make that step. So either can we imagine that there's a line there, or can we put something on the floor? Do we have something small that's easy to step over that we can kind of put down and be like, okay, let's focus. Let's just step over this. We don't need to work on walking where we're going. Let's step over this and then go from there. If we're about to make a turn and we know that that's an area that's difficult at times, can we make a wide turn? Maybe imagine a half circle and go around rather than just pivoting. And I've seen a lot of people that making those turns are difficult. So can we make wide turns? Think about where we're going. So then it's not as much of a change. It's just kind of a little bit at a time. There's also the 4S strategy, which kind of combines a lot of this together. But it's if you're in a situation, you're going somewhere and they freeze, let's stop, sigh. So just take a deep breath and emphasize that, and then try to shift our weight, and then step with that weight shift. So that's kind of just a thing to help you stop and think about, stop, sigh, think about what's the best movement and motion to do, and then let's try to continue from there. And the biggest thing, again, is just patience. And I know it's hard, especially if we're in a hurry and trying to get something done, but not forcing that movement. So there's other things we'll talk about when like initiating a task is helpful. But if someone's frozen, kind of trying to give them a nudge to initiate that movement, that's not going to be helpful in that situation. It can kind of get to that anxiety factor and then make it worse. So we really want to help them remember this list of techniques and think together with them, okay, what's something that we can try to come out of this versus just trying to hurry things along, because and it's hard. It's hard as a caregiver, and you're frozen and you want to do the next thing, and we're thinking, why aren't we moving? The kind of so the stop, sigh, shift, and step is good for us as caregivers too. Let's stop, let's sigh, let's think about what's the best technique, and then let's move on from here and try one of those things. So these are just some things to try and see. Like I said, it works in some situations, not for others. It's problem solving, trial and error, and see what works best for you. Okay, so techniques for promoting participation. So yeah, we say it's good to let them do things, but what does that look like? How do we make that happen? How do we help them help themselves? And there's a couple ways that we can think about it. One is to initiate a task and then let them continue that task. So let's say someone has a really hard time getting their underpants over their feet, especially if they wear the, like stretchy pull-up ones or something, and it's hard to bend down and get those on. So then you just do it for them. But they probably could pull it up once it's on their ankles. It's just hard to get it around their feet. So maybe you put it over their foot and have them pull it up the rest of the way. So that's another one of those things that might seem common sense to some people, but other people, as they do it, they just do it and don't even think about it. So it's just something to think about. What can they do? If I initiate a task for them, can they finish it from there? As they're standing up, maybe they're holding on to a grab bar and trying to get it over their pants. If I help with a little bit, can they do the rest? Another is the opposite approach. Have them do as much as they can for a task and then just help as they need it. So there'll be times that I'm sitting watching someone put a shirt on and they're struggling, and I feel bad for just sitting here and watching them, but I want to see what they can do. I want them to struggle with it a little bit to try to problem solve on their own and try to get through things. And then when they get to a part they can't really do, okay, I'll help with that part and then watch the rest. So let them start it, let them do as much as they can. And I mean, I always let them know, sorry, I'm not just watching you struggle. Like, I want to see what you can do. I'm not trying to just sit here and watch. But I want you to do as much as you can. And then another way is combine the two and just kind of work together with someone. Let's say someone doesn't have the strength to pull something up or to open something or reach for something. And so rather than you do it for them or watch them try and fail, can we both hold on to these pants and pull them up at the same time? Can we both reach for this jar, open this up while you're doing this motion and I'll help the motion? So it's just what if they get a little bit of support, can they do it at the same time rather than just doing something for them? And then other techniques to promote this participation that will really help, we'll talk about in the next couple weeks. And that's just adapting the environment, adapting the techniques and the way that we're doing something, and using adaptive equipment, like I said, is like my favorite thing. So we'll do all of that in the weeks to come. We'll talk more. But these are ways to be able to promote this participation. So here we talk about motivation again. How do we get someone to be motivated to do these things and to participate? And it's tough. Like I said, it's kind of getting to know someone in a different way than how you already know them. And really figure out what motivates them. What's that internal motivation? What's that intrinsic motivation that they have? Is there maybe a future event that's coming up that you know that they really want to get to, but if they're not participating in this, it's going to be really hard to get them there. So can we use that as a motivating factor for them to continue to try? Is it time with their family? They want to be here to spend time with their kids, with their grandkids. Can we use that as a motivating factor? Like, hey, let's keep doing this so you can be strong, so you can get out of the house, so you can bend over. I know there was a commercial out a couple years ago of a gentleman lifting weights and doing certain things, and then it turns out it was Christmas and he was lifting his grandkid up to put the star on the tree. And I just thought that was really cool. So that was his motivating factor. He wanted to lift his granddaughter, so he's here lifting weights. So why would someone want to stay strong? Not so you can stay strong, but why would they want to stay strong, and help motivate them that way? It also goes in, so that's with doing the task. But then there's also, how do we motivate them to use a mobility device? Is someone maybe avoiding a cane or a walker, and maybe they should be using a walker? And I know a lot of times people don't want to start a walker because they see it as a barrier. They see it as something else that they need. They see it as holding them back from something. When in reality, a walker can be such a great asset to actually increase independence. I know someone I was working with, and he wasn't walking a lot, and he was having some back pain, and it was painful for him to walk, and he was getting really tired, but he didn't want to use a walker. Walkers for old people. He's not an old person. But we got him a type of walker that was supportive for him, and he started using it, and he could walk so much further than he could before. Now he could go for walks with his dog beside him, and he could be outside, and it increased his independence and his opportunity by using that as a tool versus it being there as a barrier. So it's all about how we frame things in terms of independence. A lot of times telling people it'll keep them safe is not a motivator for them. They don't really care about that, unfortunately. But we're all kind of like that as a preventative way. It's hard to motivate, but independence is more of a motivating factor for a lot of people. So another way to help motivate, and sometimes in terms of this, oh, do it for this event, or do it for your grandkids, or the walker will increase independence. Again, they might not listen to you. It might not work coming from you. It might take getting an outside perspective to come in and recommend those things for them to see it in a different way that makes sense. Another way that we can do things, once someone is internally motivated to do something, we can get some charts or systems in place to help them motivate themselves. So this wouldn't necessarily work as like, oh, I want you to do this. I'm going to set up this star chart and you're going to do it. Like, the star chart isn't going to motivate them if they're not already motivated. But if they want to, but they have a hard time getting themselves going, sometimes that could help. I know when I was in college, I had a planner and I would write down my assignments I needed to do, and I would give myself stickers if I did everything on my planner that day. And I knew that I was in college and stickers sounded like a childish thing to do, but it motivated me because I wanted a planner full of stickers. So if someone wants to exercise more, or they want to do something and they're having a hard time remembering that they want to do it, maybe we can set up some sort of chart or system that they can check off when they do things as a visual reminder for them. So it's more of a reminder and a motivator, but something to keep them going with themselves, or coming up with some sort of reward system. Like, they say you can help them figure it out, but they say for themselves, I want to do this task, this many times this week. And if I do, then I'll let myself do something else. So figuring out some sort of system for them that will help. This picture on the screen here is a gentleman that I went with them to Hawaii a couple of years ago. They have a condo that they went every February, and they were worried, since his Parkinson's diagnosis, about going and being in an environment, because he had a lot of assistive tools at home, and how is it going to work there. And so I actually went with them for just the first couple days and helped show them how to kind of adapt and modify their environment to help him be safe and really thrive in that situation. And then I took off, and they stayed the rest of the month, and he did great there. He was walking around more than he was at home. He really wanted to walk on the beach on his birthday, and we weren't sure if that was going to happen, but I was able to be there, thankfully, on his birthday, and we walked on the beach, and it was just awesome. It was great. And so that was his motivator at that time. He wanted to be able to walk on the beach. So it's just finding out, not everyone's going to be able to do that, but maybe there are situations that with the right help and support they can do, and it's something to work for. So just some thoughts of what to incorporate into that. And then here we are. Whoops, we went backwards. There we are. You guys need support too as caregivers. And my husband laughed when he saw this slide because the oxygen mask is just such a known thing, but it's so true. Like when you're on an airplane, they tell you put on your own oxygen mask before you put it on someone else. And in the same situation, you can't take care of someone else if you don't take care of yourself. And it's very difficult. And I know that there's a lot of guilt in that, and there's a lot of just how do you have time to take care of yourself. I've been noticing that I used to always view massages as like a luxury thing, and I'm starting to recognize it as a good for your muscles and your body thing. And there's some times that I'm like, I need a massage because I'm gonna be hurting myself, but I'm not taking the time to go do that. Like, when do I have time for that? It's hard, but we can't take care of other people if we're going to be wearing ourselves out or hurting ourselves. To be able to support someone else, you have to be yourself and not just way drained out. So taking time for yourself, people feel bad about often. I hope you don't. You shouldn't. But I know a lot of people who feel bad about taking time for themselves, but it's not actually hurting the person that you're caring for by you being gone. It's actually helping them because you're getting the support you need and you're being rejuvenated, and then you can come back and be a better support for them. So that's when it comes in, if I'm here caring for them all the time, is it possible? I know sometimes it's very difficult, but is it possible to get someone else to come be a caregiver for them every now and then? Or is it possible to even, with therapy, like it might be 1 hour at a time, but that's 1 hour that you can do a little breathing for yourself or something different. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's actually better to take time for yourself. And crazy things happen. I know that there are times that you're working with the person, your loved one, and there's a toileting disaster or big messes in the kitchen or the table or the food with eating. Or maybe there's some arguing going on, or you're being yelled at because they don't want the support that you're trying to give them or something else. And it's hard and it's draining. And those situations happen. So how do we kind of come out of those situations and find some sanity in yourself when those do happen? Again, you are in this all the time. A lot of you are full-time caregivers, and I have experience in these situations, but as a therapist, I'm with a person an hour at a time. So I know my experience is different than yours. But just trying to step back from a situation and figure out what's going on before kind of reacting to it if it is a really hard one. Sorry, I get distracted, but this is a good point. If you guys have a lot of medical visits and it conflicts with regularly scheduled self-care activities, so attending a caregiver workshop, that's a great idea, but sometimes how do you fit it in? So like I said with the time at first, it's hard to transition and restructure things, but can we make it to where medical visits are on this day, or this day is for caregiving? Can we schedule things around that and really making it a priority? And I know it's difficult. But if we're in a situation, okay, let's say we're helping someone and there is a really messy situation that we need to now clean up and we're overwhelmed and drained, can we just try to take a step back and maybe not take care of it right away? If you are not mentally and physically prepared to take care of it, maybe take a step back from that. And then going back to it when you're ready. So sometimes it's finding the humor in situations. Like, are you serious? This is such a mess. How did this even happen? Like, my life is a mess. This is a disaster. But you know what? it's kind of so much a disaster. It's a little bit comical. I was almost late for this training today because I was with my son and I was supposed to drop him off somewhere, and he had a huge poop explosion and it was all over himself. And I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, I just need to drop you off like this. But I'm like, I can't drop him off somewhere with poop all over himself. So it was one of those situations. Like, I was kind of stressed out about it. I'm like, all these people are going to be waiting for me, but what am I going to do? You know, like, we just take care of it and it is going to be all right and it's going to happen. And so if you're in a position where you're not ready to handle it, like, take a step back for a minute and then we'll come back and handle it. A couple of things to think about is, you know, every time that we're like really stressed out as a caregiver, or the person we're caring for is not cooperating and all these things are a mess and happening to us, it's okay. Like, we're allowed to feel that difficulty, but we also want to see the good things. So can we take a step back and say, okay, these are 3 blessings in my life right now, or these are three great things that are happening. Like, this is one really terrible situation, and here's 3 great little situations. Um, Another thing that I was recommended to do a couple years ago, I was doing this challenge, and one of the things we had to do each day for the challenge was take a gratitude photo. So I have a little album in my phone, and I haven't been doing it lately, and I should get back into it. But each day I would move a picture from my phone into my gratitude album, take a picture of something each day, whether it was my kids or the sunset or something fun that I got to do, or um, a clean room for once, you know, like, snap a picture of that and move it into this gratitude album. And it helps just kind of put things into perspective and remember, like, yeah, it's okay to be kind of stressed out and have these difficult things happen, but there's also these things that I'm really blessed to have around. And then I'm able to look back through that album and see these great things. And so that's just a great tool, I think, to help kind of remember the good things. And also getting the support you need. Caregiver workshops are great. Caregiver support groups are great. I just met with a girl a couple days ago. She's in Washington State, somewhere, Redmond, I think. But she does virtual counseling for caregivers. Like, that's her main thing, is working with caregivers, and a lot of that caregiver guilt and being there to talk with them. So is that something that is virtual? Can we squeeze a visit in, you know, once a month to talk to somebody about something like that? So it's hard, but just trying to find some way to take time for yourself and some way to remember all of the great things that happen amongst the crazy things, is one way to do it. So that's kind of where that's what I had for this week, just kind of talking about the initial. I will tell you, her name is Jenna, and I will get her information and either give it to Jen so she can send it out, or I can provide it in next week's course for sure, because that is a great resource. Yeah, I'll share that. I know her name's Jenna. I don't have everything on with me right now, but I can share that for sure, because I want to be able to provide you guys with as many resources as you can. So if you have any other questions for me right now about what we just talked about, throw it in the chat. Otherwise, next week, we're going to be talking about positioning and ergonomics to keep yourself safe, to keep your loved ones safe, and to make things easier. It's crazy how a little bit of adjustments in how we're positioned just make it so much easier to move or go from one place to another. So if you have any specific questions about that leading up to next week, you can reach out. I was going to put my contact information in here also, but I forgot. Whoops.
Folks can also just respond to that. Well, here, let's talk about questions that you might have later, especially about positioning and ergonomics. So I am going to take, Heidi's going to send me her slides. I am going to take the slides, and I'm going to post the video on our YouTube channel, and I am going to upload the slides, and I will create a link that you will get in a post-event email. And that if you respond to that post-event email with any questions about next week, then I will get those to Heidi. So that seems like the easiest way to do that. So do expect an email from me probably on Monday or Tuesday, as I'm on the road starting tomorrow for a couple of days. But I will send that stuff out. And any
Perfect.
other resources that Heidi wants to share with me.
Awesome. Cool. And yeah, I will send you some stuff before that, so then you can send it out with the email. Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, and if any other questions come up, just let me know and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank
Yes,
you.
so you are welcome.